It was June 25, 1988, Fort Lauderdale, the day the mystery began, when a young man named David Jackson failed to meet his brother Mark at the airport.
It was a gut feeling something was wrong, and I knew it.
Now, 15 years later, Detective Donna Velasquez relived that puzzling time. David's ex-wife Barbara, by then remarried and living in Arizona, as she told Detective Velasquez, got a call from David's worried mother. Barbara said she wasn't worried. Not then.
I thought, oh, okay, he was with one of his girlfriends, and she was like, no, we're doing a missing person report. And I said, no, he's gonna call me in a couple days. I know he is. He's gonna call me in a couple days. And he never called. He never called.
One day turned into the next. Police, family, everybody tried to find him. Couldn't.
Started looking, searching. Through canals, swimming through pipes, under the little bridges, on the little dirt roads, anywhere. You see a car that looked like his go by, you do a U-turn and you chased it.
How long did that go on?
That went on until they found his car.
Which, more than 3 months later, turned out to be at the airport. So, did he just take off? His close friend didn't think so.
Maybe he got on a plane and maybe he wanted to do something different. And then was like, no, he wouldn't do that.
For one thing, David had been preparing for the arrival in 2 weeks of his 5-year-old son, John. This was a big one, a month-long summer visit. He was preparing for this visit.
Oh, yeah, for Johnny, yeah. Wanted everything perfect.
And right in the middle of preparations, he vanished? Didn't make sense. But the days turned into weeks, months, years. Not a sign of David. The police went on in newer cases, but his mother never let up. Phoning, nagging, writing. She knew David was out there, somewhere.
I wrote letters to Oprah Winfrey, I wrote to America's Most Wanted, and then I thought, okay, maybe I can have the semis, put a picture of him in the back of the semi. So I got a list of all the big trucking companies and did all the letters, but it took me a long time to finish any letter about him because I didn't want the ending to be like I thought it was.
It was, she said, a horrible limbo. A little piece of her still hoping for good news. Part of her mourning a loss.
I found a therapist right away. She said, take like 20 minutes out of every day, either scream and cry in the morning or scream and cry at night.
Can anybody who hasn't been in your shoes understand what it's like for a mother to leave?
No.
Now, years later, the investigation was back in high gear. Judy told Detective Velasquez that in some corner of her heart, she still hoped David might just turn up safely someday. The detective, however, was not inclined to false hope. She did not for a minute think he was still alive. Had he died accidentally, surely a sign of him would have appeared. No, she believed when bodies aren't found, it's because someone has intentionally hidden them. But David Jackson might show up, just not alive.
And my wheels started turning, and I started thinking, you know, we live in Florida. With the crazy weather that we have and the water table that we have, if he were ever buried anywhere, somewhere along the line, you're going to pop up.
Maybe, the detective thought, remains had popped up. After all, it had been a decade and a half since he disappeared. And so she Googled unidentified remains. It led her down an endless internet trail.
And it's probably going on 10, 11 o'clock, and I'm sure my husband's saying, well, where in the heck is that old girl?
One site after another, dead ends, until she got to one created by a Florida medical examiner. Promising, but exhausting.
I'm there typing away and typing, and it pops up about 100 matches.
But she was determined. She finally winnowed it down to a possible 3.
One of them really stands out for me. It says white male, and it says over 6 foot. David's a tall guy. He's a white male. Possibly.
Those particular bones, just a few, a partial skeleton, turned up during construction of a Walmart parking lot, not far from the place where David lived. Surfaced just a year after David died, had been gathering dust in storage for 15 years. The detective went to see a forensic anthropologist, but when the doctor measured the bones...
She comes out and she says, no, she says, it's looking like he's only about 5'9".
Still, Velasquez had a hunch that she had finally found David Jackson. and she wasn't the sort of person to give up on a hunch.
And I said, can we please do this one more time? She comes back and she goes, honey, she says, I was wrong the first time. She says, this person is anywhere between 5'9" and 6'1". I said, oh my gosh, I think I've hit pay dirt.
She got DNA from David's mother, waited for a lab to compare the samples. And 10 days later, Detective Velasquez called the testing facility.
She comes to the phone and she says to me, well, I sure hope you're sitting down. I said, why? You got a 100% match. Oh my gosh. I said, what? Because I'm not believing that I'm hearing what I'm hearing.
15 years after he disappeared, David Jackson had finally been found. Question now was, what happened to him? How did he end up here?
Coming up, a strange coincidence, or was it?
It's an eerie feeling, that he was in that area that I didn't even know about.
When Dateline continues.